I'm talking to Rob Kenner, the director of Food Inc. And I'm sitting in his backyard in Hancock Park, and it's very nice and warm in the middle of January. um, so what struck me off the top with this film is that it was bright and colorful and accessible and snappy. You were taking on a very serious subject that you obviously feel very strongly about. You had a goal. Maybe you could talk about that goal and why you wanted to present it in a certain way.
I wanted to understand where our food came from, and I thought that was an interesting subject for a film, and I thought it would be interesting to talk to all these different people who make this food. Unfortunately, that was not the way the film ended up being made. But I also wanted to make a film that was entertaining, that was pretty, that was, I love traveling around the United States and seeing all of this farmland. And so I didn't want to just make a film that made you want to keep your eyes closed and scared you. I wanted to make a film that made you open your mind and on some levels entertained you and at the same time made you think. So that was my goal.
Did you have a sense of the psychology of the ordinary American eater and shopper, that on some level they don't want to know, that they're in denial?
Yeah. I think we're bombarded with so much information over the course of a day in our new world with the internet. We're just getting bombarded with information. So it's hard to, it's much easier to not know. And I have friends who've said, I hear the film is great, and I said, well, have you seen it? And they go, no, I can't watch it. I don't want it to affect me. And what's interesting is I think I wanted to make a film for people who haven't been thinking about this food. That was my real goal. It was not to make it for all those people who think the food system is horrible. It's not to make it for vegetarians who hate, meat eaters.
This is directed at meat eaters.
This is directed for all the people who haven't really thought about the system. And it's to make you, it's to make all of us just to think about it, because I think that's how we're going to change the system. If it's just for sort of the 5% of the people out there who are totally conscious of everything already, it wasn't intended to slap ourselves on the back and say, oh, I've known that, this is great that we've said it. It was really just to make us think in a more provocative way about the system. And there are things in it that I've had, sort of very conscious food eaters are saying, why'd you put that in? We have a section about Walmart and saying that maybe they can be helpful in changing the system. I have mixed feelings about it, but I think it's important to be provocative on all levels.
Well, when I read Fast Food Nation, it's so weird, but one of the things that really stuck with me was that In-N-Out Burger was a positive story.
Yeah.
And it's like we need to hang on to some of the things that are going to make things better.
I can off the record say that, but
for that purpose, I have a notebook for background stuff.
Yeah.
What is there something you want to?
Well,
tell
I
me?
was just going to say, no, you know what? I can say it on camera. I'll figure it out. Yeah. I think it's important to give solutions, and it's important to talk about problems. It's important to make people conscious of how we're eating, but it's also important to give solutions. And I think there are solutions, and we can change the system. And that was perhaps the hardest part of the film, is to figure out what those solutions are. And it's complicated. But we all eat 3 times a day. And if we become a little more conscious, I think we can help sort of affect our own eating habits and affect the kind of foods that are being sold to us. These companies are very conscious of what we're eating. The same companies that refused to be in our film are now very interested in talking to me all of a sudden.
Interesting.
And it's not because of me. It's because there was an incredible reaction to this film. So I've since been invited to numbers of events with all of the companies that did not want to go on camera.
Well, tell the story a little bit of how difficult it really was to get what you needed to put
Yeah.
into this film.
I had hoped to tell the story of where our food comes from, and I had hoped to talk to all the producers of this food. Um, on one hand, we are producing food for less money than at any time in history, and that's a pretty amazing fact. The problem is that this food comes at a high cost, and I thought that becomes an interesting conversation for a film. Um, I'm not someone who's setting out to prove a point. I really wanted to talk to intelligent people and try to understand the pros and cons of the system. Unfortunately, the whole industrial food system was basically put off limits to me. People did not want us going behind the scenes to see how this food was made, and they didn't want to talk about it. And I found that really frustrating.
Yeah.
And it changed what our movie was. So on one level, I was having to keep moving and redesigning the film. Because how do you make a fair film with so much of this world, so many of the players in this world don't want to talk to you? And you want to make a fair, balanced film, and I want to do it without narration.
Very tricky.
And yeah, actually,
You used experts
Yeah.
like Eric Schlosser of Fast Food Nation
Right.
to help you carry that.
well, in a funny way, I always have a hard time with experts. At this point, I think Eric and Michael have both become participants
In this ongoing
in
debate. Yeah.
this world. So I enjoyed them more as participants and advocates than as experts.